What's up, Dolphins representatives? What they do is they wave. And what I want y'all to do right now is I want you to open up your Bible, turn to the book of Proverbs, chapter 26, verse 11. It reads, "As a dog returns to his own vomit, so a fool repeats his folly." Donald Trump had a quote where he said, "Pay attention, people. There's no excuse for making the mistakes that others have made. If you do, then it's your own fault and you deserve no sympathy or compassion." If Stephen Ross messes this up with a good coach, it looks like a coach that is on the rise in Mike McDaniel. All we got to do is get a defensive coordinator, which, like I told y'all, I want that to be Sean Desai or Sam Madison. It's looking like we're interviewed Vic Fangio. We interviewed Sean Desai already. Chris Richards, we interviewed as well, who used to, coach defense for the Cowboys. He would be a good option. Also, I would put him almost close to Desai. I wouldn't mind him if we were to name him as the next DC. But we got to get this right. And Stephen Ross is going to have to be patient with Mike McDaniel. Don't meddle. Don't make the mistake that you made with all the other coaches with Mike McDaniel. Give him time to find the right DC and give him time to also check to see if that DC is doing his job. If he got to fire him and get somebody else in, that's fine. What we do know about Mike McDaniel is on the offensive side of the ball, I'm not worried, especially with the weapons that we have. And I believe Chris Greer is going to also supplement the team with even more weapons and more players. But when I watched that Cincinnati Bengals game against Buffalo, how they was able to handle Josh Allen and shut down what they was doing, and I look at who their coaching staff is, and then I look at the Detroit Lions season, particularly the game that we played them and how hard it was for us to win that game. That was a slugfest because the Detroit Lions, their offense is going to be prolific. They're doing this with Jared Goff. Imagine if they somehow draft Bryce Young. Maybe they move up to the draft and get Bryce Young or Will Levis, and he becomes a stud with the players they already got with Amon St. Brown and Reynolds and Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. Detroit is looking pretty good too, and look who their coach is at Detroit. Look who their head coach is and their coaching staff. And they even had Charles Harris even playing better with the Lions. Man Campbell did that. We couldn't do that when he was here. And it kind of makes me sick to my stomach because they were once coaches of the Dolphins. That's what I don't like, and we made a mistake with those guys, and it's looking like Detroit is going to be flourishing, And I think that Stephen Ross should become good friends with Cincinnati Bengals owner Mike Brown and learn from him and how he's been doing business, football business, and how he shows patience with his scouting department and coaches. Listen, a lot of criticism has been, bestowed upon Mike Brown about him being cheap, the facilities not being up to standards to the other, facilities around the league. It seemed like the rest of the facilities are all state of the art. They got better technology is what they're saying. And that Mike Brown is just kind of cheap. He don't want to spend no money. And he also don't like spending a lot of money on free agents. But guess what? For as long as I can remember, the Bengals have always had a pretty good offense. If y'all really think about it, all the way back to Boomer. When they had Boomer Esiason, Klingler, Carson Palmer, Andy Dalton. Even Andy Dalton had the Bengals in playoff contentions or in the playoffs, and now with Joe Burrow. So Mike Brown has done something right, and what he's done right is he's just been patient and he's trusted the process. His dad obviously is the legend Paul Brown, who Shula learned under. He learned under that too. And he's the owner, but that's his daddy, So his daddy gave him the formula and the blueprint on how to build teams. And the Bengals have always had a good offense. They've always had good receivers and good running backs. Joe Mixon, AJ Green, Tyler Boyd, blah, 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 blah. And I think he's just underrated as an owner. And Zach Zach Taylor, he lucked up for this job. I mean, you look at former head coach Marvin Lewis. Say what you want about him. He's got a winning record as a coach. He's 131 wins, 122 losses, 3 ties, and he had 11 winning seasons. And credit Mike Brown for being patient, building through the draft, and staying out the way. Shout out to Andrew Lifka from the official Miami Dolphins football group for posting a comment pointing out that we fucked up by letting championship coaches walk out of the door, and I agree with him 100%. You know, I was thinking the same thing and immediately put this video together. Let's look at Dan Campbell. In 2010, Campbell began his coaching career when he was hired by us as a coaching intern. He started off there. In 2011, we promoted him to tight ends coach. And you know who else was on the Fins coaching staff in 2011? Brian Daboll and Todd Bowles. And that was the year that we fired Tony Sperano after dropping a 4-9 and officially eliminated from the postseason and made Bowles the interim coach. After we made him the interim, we started balling. We beat the Bills the next week, 39-23 in week 15. Almost beat the Patriots at Gillette Stadium, but we lost 24-27. And we closed out our season by playing spoiler and beating the Jets 19-17 to knock them out of playoff contention. And that was a game where our defense really balled and stepped up. We intercepted Mark Sanchez and limited him to just 235 yards passing. And instead of building on that and hiring Todd Bowles as the head coach, what do? We hired Joe Philbin, who drafted Ryan Tannehill. For 3 years, the fans got restless with Joe Philbin and Bullygate, and, you know, they fired him. You know, 2015 after a 1-3 start. Dan Campbell was named the interim head coach for the remainder of the 2015 season and led us to 5 wins and 7 losses. And instead of building on that and giving him a fair chance, what did Stephen Ross do? What did Mike Tannenbaum do? They hired Adam Gase instead. Before Gase interviewed, we was looking at Doug Marrone. We tried to, get Josh McDaniels. Hugh Jackson was an option. Matt Patricia and Dirk Cutter. I mean, come on, man. You know, none of them would have been better than Dan Campbell, who, would have retained quarterback coach Zach Taylor and probably promoted him to offensive coordinator, just like how the Rams, made him an offensive coordinator there. And DB coach Lou Anarumo would have probably been promoted to DC. So we would have had Dan Campbell as head coach, Zach Taylor as the OC, and Lou Anarumo as the DC. Look at the Bengals defense right now. They defense, and look at their O-line. Look at how Zach Taylor, as a young head coach, has not made excuses for his offensive line. He's just corrected the problem. You know what I'm saying? And they got Ted Karras there at center, who we got rid of. He's about to go and play in the AFC Championship game right now. So sometimes it's not the players, it's the scheme. Whether you run a man blocking scheme or a zone blocking scheme, all that matters. Your running backs having vision and seeing the hole. Your quarterback not just taking a sack, being able to scramble. All that make the offensive line look good. And also the timing of the offense. How quick the rhythm offense, how quick they can have the quarterbacks get the ball out. Who messed all of that up, in my opinion? Mike Tannenbaum. Mike Tannenbaum. That's probably what we should call him. And then you look at Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor's offenses have averaged 35.76 passing attempts over the 54 games that he's been interim offensive coordinator, which was 2015. He was the offensive coordinator. That's why I said Dan Campbell would have retained him. Or when he was the head coach of the Bengals, which is slightly above the league average. From 2013 through 2015, he was our quarterback's coach. And he did well in that position too, as he helped develop a young Ryan Tannehill. But we ended up firing offensive coordinator Bill Lazor in 2015. And I think Lazor has also worked with Zach Taylor with the Bengals. Taylor was then the interim offensive coordinator for us, like I said, for the last 5 games. And we played pretty good. Matt Moore, he played pretty good. And, Reggie Bush, actually the offense had more juice once Philbin was gone and Daboll was able to have a little bit more say in the play calling. And we were a bad team, so you really can't blame, Taylor for our offense not performing well, but we still only averaged 17 points per game in those 5 games that he ran the offense. We were beating teams, but we didn't score a lot of points. We just played better. And that was even lower than the team's season average of 19.4 points per game. Additionally, we scored 15 points or less in 3 of those 5 games. So they looked at that. And Taylor's record as the team's interim offensive coordinator was 2. We had 2 wins and 3 losses. And that made him the most successful interim offensive coordinator in Dolphins history, which ain't really saying much. We never really needed an interim offensive coordinator because we always had solid coaching with Shula and all the Armsparker and all of the gang. We already had good coaching, but I think if we consider at the time the players that he had to work with, and again, gave him time, I think he would have improved Tannehill and the offense. And then Lou Anarumo, he was with the team since 2012 and was promoted by Dan Campbell to interim defensive coordinator in 2015 when we fired Kevin Coyle. Kevin Coyle was terrible. I mean, Man Campbell believed in Lou because him and Lou, they're kind of like-minded. Both of them come from that Bill Parcells coaching tree. And Anarumo, he previously served as the DB coach at Purdue and Marshall and assistant head coach at Harvard. And the last time he served as a defensive coordinator was 1992 through 94 with the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. And, when you look at Coyle's strategy, it was so bad that there was certain defensive players on our team that just bypassed Philbin, went right to Stephen Ross, and they was complaining about how bad it was. That was probably Ndamukong Suh and maybe Rashad Jones. They probably was the one, and Brent Grimes was probably complaining too because his wife was trying to start trouble to get him up out of there. This was around that same time, and at the time, we ranked 30th in the league defensively, giving up 399.5 yards per game, despite the $114 million check that we wrote to Sue. And the only teams that was worse than us was the Raiders and the Browns, which you never want to be in that company. We was ranked 15th defensively the year before Coyle got the job, so we was middle of the pack. Then we regressed. 21st, 12th, the last season that he was there. Even worse, we went from having a 6th ranked scoring defense, we was getting turnovers before he joined, to 19th at 25.2 points allowed per game. That was just terrible. And another thing that Campbell did, not only making them offensive coordinators, but the first thing that he did that made me know that we should probably stick with Campbell was that he made NFL coach Al Saunders a senior offensive assistant. And Saunders used to be a head coach of the Chargers when they was with San Diego from 1986 to 88, and he was the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs, the Colts, the Raiders, and he helped guide the offense with coordinator Bill Lazor at the time. And I think if we would have kept them in place, again, our offense would have improved. And Saunders comes from that El Coryell scheme. That's what the Lions is running right now. And they're just morphing their offense at different times. And I think that's what made Jared Goff better. Who won that deal? If you look at it, they got rid of Stafford, who went to the Rams. You could say for now, the Rams won that deal because they won a Super Bowl. But Jared Goff took the Rams to the Super Bowl before, so he wasn't that bad. It's not that they really needed a quarterback. I think if they would have just been patient with Goff, he would have taken them to the Super Bowl again also. you know? And so the Lions came out pretty good. They got Penei Sewell. They got that boy from Alabama, the wide receiver that was injured, but he came back. And now he looked pretty good in the last few games that he played. And you look at the Bengals, they're a good tackling team. And the other coaches that they have on their coaching staff that used to be Dolphins coaches was Marion Hobby. Flores got rid of him. You know, he spent 2 seasons as the D-line coach for us. In 2020, our defensive line powered us to top 10 NFL rankings in points allowed per game, 21.1. Sacks, 41. Forced fumbles, 14. Third down efficiency, 31.2. In 2019, you know, he kind of developed Christian Wilkins. I think they used to work together at Clemson because I think Hobby coached him at Clemson. And he led all rookie defensive linemen with 56 tackles. And as you can see, Christian Wilkins was at the time we got Christian, I'm pretty sure a lot of fans, they may not admit it, but they probably didn't like the pick. But look at how he's turned out. Senior defensive assistant Mark Duffner, who has that title with the Bengals from 2014 to 2015, Duffner served as our linebackers coach. Look at the Bengals linebackers. Look at our line. We're having trouble in our linebacking core right now, even though we got good linebackers. Jordan Kovacs, he played for us. You know, prior to his coaching career, he played safety for us. We had him backing up Rashard Jones, I believe. And for parts of 3 seasons, 2013 through 2015. And he only totaled 10 total tackles. 10 tackles and a sack. But he's the assistant linebackers coach. So, you know, I mean, all those coaches we let go. And, I mean, look at what they're doing right now. And this puts pressure on Mike McDaniel. He's going to have to make sure that he can keep up. Because you would hate to see as a fan us not make the playoffs again or us get knocked out in the first round and the Lions have made it to the NFC Championship game and the Bengals have won the Super Bowl and Flores gets a job with the Cardinals or with someone else and now they're flourishing too. It's not going to look too good, you know? So we got to learn from these mistakes. We got to be patient again. Can't make mistakes. Anthony Campanile, he's the linebackers coach that we're interviewing in-house for the defensive coordinator job. He might be a good choice. But y'all let me know what y'all think in the comment section. Till next time, signing off.